Coenvioma Law, PLLC is 100% native owned and operated, founded by Varen Coenvioma. Their practice areas include corporate law, business transactions, finance, economic development, gaming, casino development, online gaming, real estate, environmental permitting and approvals, telecommunications, government affairs, employment and labor relations, historic preservation and cultural resources, and energy. Coenvioma Law is committed to making positive and lasting change in our communities as they support nonprofit volunteering, community activism, and employing Indian preference in hiring and vendor relations.
Your family's health is important. Access and Kids Care can help you care for the people you care about. See a doctor on or off reservation at IHS tribal and urban Indian clinics or anywhere else. Health coverage through Access and Kids Care is offered at no cost to tribal members, their children, and their grandchildren. To make an appointment with someone who can help you apply for health coverage, visit coveraz.org or call 211. If you already have Access or Kids Care, don't forget to renew. Cover AZ can help with that as well. That's coveraz.org or call 211.
You are now listening to the Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. I am your host, the 5-star, 5-diamond chef, J-Man, and with me is your favorite sauce boy, Carl.
Good morning, everybody out there. It's great to be back here in the studio. I know you guys waited so long to hear us again, and I know I've waited so long to hear my voice again, my beautiful voice. And so, you know, it's so strange because we haven't done this in how many months? Like what? Almost 3 months?
Do you think that statement's true, that you're everybody's favorite sauce boy, or do you think...
Do I think there's that statement is true?
Do you think there's a bigger sauce boy out there in the world, bigger than Carl? Because I guess if we're measuring that statement by that measurement, then you know, I think you're a king.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're king of the sauce boys.
Good.
No, but it is good to be back, and we haven't been back in the studio since December. Right before we started recording, I asked you to look up the last release episode, and that was way back in December 14th. And so that's been about close to 3 months since you've heard from us. And you know, there were a lot of people reaching out, like, "Are you guys still recording?
Yeah, are you guys still alive?
The podcast still going on?" And you know, and as I was driving into the studio, what I was thinking was that because we started this podcast, I think in 2020, like right when the pandemic hit, and I think that in those initial conversations that you and I had about scheduling, was one of the big things was making time for, I guess, the cultural side of who we are, of who Carl and J-Man are, but because of the pandemic, we never really had to exercise that schedule to where we're missing big chunks of time because this is going on or that's going on. And so this year was the first time that we really had to make time for our doings, I guess, our Hopi doings.
Our culture.
And, you know, you just mentioned before we started recording that there was something going on at Songopavi that they haven't done since
the COVID times.
So I think that's true for a lot of different villages. That a lot of things have been going on. And so, you know, I think that's kind of the main reason as to why we had such a long sabbatical, was that it was trying to set time aside for things like Pamlia, for Powomlia, and then now, although those have
Herd
concluded,
Museum,
the Herd Show,
we got
Santa Fe. In addition to doing our cultural responsibilities, using that cultural knowledge to make money in true Hopi fashion. And so, you know, there's definitely a lot that's going on the Hopi calendar, but we are back, and you know, we're back with season 10.
Yes, season 10. I'm excited. I'm very excited because we do have a lot of things that we want to talk about. So, and with that, we're going to have a lot of guests. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of
guests, to Carl's dismay.
I mean, like I love guests in a way. It's just that, you know, it's It's so hard to edit. I mean, if there was a person that edited all this stuff. So.
You know what? You know what's funny though? It's because in preparation for the season, we do this thing where we write down all these different topics that we want to talk about, and then we kind of put them all together in this pot. And then we just draw off from the pot to equal up to 10 different topics. But then I noticed that when you gave me your list, it's like, damn, Carl really wants to talk about urban Hopis for some reason. It's like all of the suggestions that you had, like some of them didn't even relate to urban Hopis, but yet you threw urban Hopis in there. It's like, let's talk about the Hopi cultural calendar and urban Hopis. Let's talk about veterans and urban Hopis.
I'm just trying to appeal to all you outsiders there. So, that was my whole intention to do that. So I hope we're going to be talking about my favorite topic, which is aliens.
God, you know what? I thought about that too.
The alien one?
The committee is still on the fence
about the alien
topic.
One?
And so, you know what?
I want to talk about
I think that the fair thing to do would be to leave it to the people to decide. And so I think that soon we'll put a poll up and see if the people really want to hear about aliens, because then I have a feeling that if I let you talk about aliens, it's going to end up like that Halloween episode, that very first one that we did, where you did all the talking.
It
ended up being a shipwreck episode.
Well, just to give you a little insight about the alien thing is that a lot of Hopis back in the 60s and 70s thought that, there was something bigger out there. And in Hotvela, there was a group of men there that thought that there was aliens, that there was life out there, because one man saw something in the sky that he wasn't familiar with. Oh, really? And so he immediately formed this sort of committee, like, to convince other guys and say that, okay, when something is flying overhead, we have to go to our pipes and smoke for them, and that kind of gave that delusional kind of way to like saying there must be something bigger out there.
That man wasn't probed, was he?
I'm pretty sure that I don't know who this guy was, but yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. So.
But, this season is a special season because it's our 10th season. And I think, once we roll around to May, the podcast will have been 3 years old. And so, I think that when we first started, I didn't really imagine that we would survive that long. Not to only mention that this season we are on the road to 100,000 downloads.
Yeah, 100,000 downloads.
That's pretty cool. And considering, because I don't know what it is, how many episodes we've released.
Yeah.
Like, we're not a consistent episode. Like, we're not releasing 52 episodes a week for sure. That we do tend to take these long breaks. And, we thank everybody out there for having the patience with us and still coming back. It's kind of really weird because even though we took this almost 3-month break, that there was a period where the podcast numbers just really surged.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, somebody out there must have been promoting the good word of the CJ podcast. And so we'd really like to thank you. But speaking of thank yous, there are some shout outs that I would like to give. And so the first shout out I'd like to give is to our presenting sponsor, to Kawan Vioma Law PLLC, our buddy Varen Kawan Vioma, who has renewed his presenting sponsorship. And so the CJ podcast is presented by Kawan Vioma Law. And so we'd like to give a big thank you, big kwa to him and his team out there. And then in addition to him, we'd also like to give a shout out to additional sponsor, to Children's Action Alliance, who did a partner with us in the last season. And so they've continued this partnership into this season. And so you'll hear those beautiful ads from those folks. And then also like to give a shout out to our intern, AJ, and her setup that she has, the Vehongnem, I believe it's the Vehongnem Creations. And so like big shout out to her, up and coming business. And then I think that one of the biggest shout outs that I would like to give is to our 30-pack Circle of Givers. You guys are the real heroes. Continued your support of the podcast, even though that we were gone for this duration of time. So I'd like to give a huge shout out to our friends, to Ita Kwatim, to Gary Lomayesva, Candice Biramin, Brandon J. Coyne, Michael Ray, Michaela Williams, Marie Nachi, Troy Lamavaya, Dion Sania, Aaron McEmrys, Deetra Leslie, and Alexis Cahey.
All right.
And so those folks deserve a big round of applause.
Thank you guys for supporting us throughout the whole idea of our podcast. Without you, basically, I don't know who else to shout out pretty much. So without you guys, your name is plastered all over the podcast world. And thank you all for that. And a special thank you to K-Neff for, sponsoring us with this beautiful building that we're in here down in beautiful downtown Gigotsmovi, Arizona.
Here in Gigotsmovi, Arizona. And so that was a really long-winded introduction. And, I think, kind of a tidbit to the listeners is that, because this is our reintroduction, I guess, episode for being gone for so long that, it does kind of, I guess this is a little bit kind of a warm-up conversation.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of going to be an episode where we talk about multiple topics. And some of these topics were suggested by you all, by the listeners, via our social media interactions. And then I think just a lot of this is just updating because then there's a lot of time to cover that we missed. And so, if we can reintroduce ourselves as a Carl and J-Man podcast, that we've been gone since December. And, I know that this is a question that you definitely like to ask. It's a question that you like to answer. How have you been, Carl, since December? You don't post on Facebook.
No.
You don't post on Instagram. No. If anybody out there wanted to learn a little bit more about the life of Carl, that it's not available to them via the traditional means through social media. And so what has Carl been up to since the last time the podcast episode dropped?
I don't do that because I live a private life. I don't plaster myself over the internet thinking that somebody's going to give me 2 cents and stuff like that. So social media is something that wasn't new to us because we grew up in the MySpace world. Because MySpace basically was just a place to put on new music and stuff like that. But besides that, I just live a private life. I don't like to plaster anything out there. Of course, Soul and them have their great moments here and there, but I'm not out there taking thousands of pictures to plaster Soul's greatest achievement, where she made hot dogs and hamburgers one day. I'm not not like that. So.
It's funny to me because then I've had that thought, I guess, about social media, because to me I think social media, I guess, really depending on how you look at it, like it can be entertaining, it can be the reason for our demise, or if you're podcast creators like us, it can be a wonderful source of content
and information
for a lot of the things that people share. And if you follow me on my personal socials, I think I posted like 5 pictures since Christmas, and so not a whole lot new into the world of J-Man, but definitely I think that I really appreciated that break, because then celebrating Christmas, and oh my god, I think that I stressed myself out this year for Christmas because I think I was too worried about having all the presents bought at a certain time, having all the presents wrapped at a certain time, intaking all of the Christmas movies and shows for that duration of time. And so I think I was definitely Christmased out, and I couldn't wait for it to be over.
So basically you stressed yourself out like a real white man.
And then New Year's came around, and then I didn't even do anything special. I don't think I even made it to midnight this past New Year's.
The New Year thing. Yeah. Actually, we just watched a 10 o'clock showing in Japan, and then their New Year's or whatever they did, and then we just went to sleep.
I think we were down in the valley, but I don't think that I even went anywhere. Like I just stayed home with the kids and let the family celebrate how they wanted to. But I think last year when it came around to New Year's that we talked about any type of New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
Did you make any New Year's resolutions, Carl?
I'm not a white man.
Do Hopis make New Year's resolutions?
Hopis don't make New Year's resolutions. They're the same every year.
I'm going to be pure this year. I'm not going to
pray every morning.
I'm going to be Hopi this time. I'm going to teach my kids how to speak Hopi.
Going to make sure I rabbit hunt this time.
And then first shot, January 1st, you wake up hungover. And you start drinking again to make the pain go away.
That was my taha. It's so strange because this year, my taha usually goes and celebrates New Year's.
Yeah.
And he'll celebrate it till March or April. and he's getting old. He's getting up there. He's almost in his 70s. So he's
no kidding.
Yeah, he's going to be that old drunk guy now. So he has a hard time having that hangover. So he gets drinks to get drunk, but then the next day he pays for it. Well, he's like, groggy, and he's like doesn't want to do anything afterwards. Like, like most drunks out here, they're when you get drunk, you're already out like at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to find your next drink.
Trying to find your next drink.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I really set any New Year's resolutions for myself this year. I think really like life was just so busy towards the end of the year. And I think that going into this year, I felt like that there wasn't really time to think about it.
Yeah.
And plus, like that, it's like we think about it, we talk about it, but do we actually do it? Like, is the action there?
Yeah.
Because see, that's the thing. Like, because you brought up social media, and I was thinking about it early on because then a lot of us, we like to post that, should I do this, or should I? And I've always been kind of the attitude that you should be about it and not really talk about it.
Yeah.
Because then does it actually happen? Because then like that, we've had this conversation before. I'm not going to bring out the extra content for this podcast anymore because we just talk about it and we're not being about it. And I think that at some point you just got to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like you just have to do it. That's the only way that it's going to happen. Because I think for me in my personal life, really, it's just being more healthier. Because getting closer to 40, like my body feels this garbage that I put into my body. My body is starting to feel the creaks and the aches and pains in my joints and all of these different things without proper preparation. And so, it's just running more or even finding other means of exercise. Because, I remember you made this comment one time when we were talking about running, and I thought it was such a dumb comment to me.
Yeah.
But now I'm actually believing that it might be true, is that, when you're a long distance runner, the more pain it puts on your knees. And I'm really feeling that pain in my knees.
I told you.
So it's like now I got to find an alternative way to keep the pounds off. And so it's like I'm going to be talking about being in spin class taking yoga or some of these other new age exercise activities.
Why not just be a Hopi and go herd sheep or something?
You got to work. Ain't got time for that.
That is work. I don't know what kind of Hopi you are.
Well, in this day and age, work means getting paid. So,
yeah, you get the reward of feeling great and reward of being a real Hopi. So,
yeah, well, you don't do that type of work either. So.
I dream it. I dream it sometimes.
You talk about it.
I talk about it. I still acknowledge it.
But in addition to, I guess, in the world of the Bahana Man, you celebrating New Year's, and then because in February, in addition to Pawomia, Valentine's Day. Is also a thing. And so, you got a lot of podcasters dedicating podcast times significantly, specifically for Valentine's Day, or the idea of romance, the idea of love. And, every year it's like, where are you getting the Res famous wife for Valentine's Day? And it's like, well, I think my friends from the San Francisco mountains are bringing her a bouquet of bean sprouts. So I think I'm good there.
I mean, like Valentine's Day, I don't think we celebrate Valentine's Day to the extent. I think it's just more of the commercial part of it. Like, in school.
So what did you get for Valentine's Day?
I didn't even know there was Valentine's Day. We were so busy with other things. We completely forgot about that.
Busy catching up with your streaming episodes that you missed.
Yeah. Busy purchasing more.
Making sure your cameras are working.
Making sure my webcam was working for OnlyFans. Making sure that
the couch is working appropriately.
Making sure my account with OnlyFans was still active.
Making sure your payment information
my payment went through. My payment went through. Yes, my payment went through.
Make sure you had enough funds to cover for the next month,
for
the next billing cycle. Oh, and I guess, and maybe this is something to say for a little bit later, but, we joke about OnlyFans, and then I think that you and I secretly have had this conversation about dedicating an episode topic to OnlyFans. And so, possibly could see that down the line.
Yeah, it's too expensive, so I had to cancel my membership, so...
but yeah, I mean, I think that statement's fairly true though. As far as Valentine's Day, it comes and goes. Like here on the res, and some folks, they try to take advantage and get a couple of extra change for their pockets, and they bake and sell goods. And, sell flowers. That there actually was a sale going on at your village at Hotvella that I did stop at, and help support the local economy there. And,
really,
got some gifts.
Really,
and yeah,
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, there was a little a market going on at the, I don't know what you guys call it, the community center across the store at Hotvella. And so there was probably about a dozen folks there selling different items. And so, picked up my kids and picked up something for the Res famous wife, locally, support local. And so, that was pretty much Valentine's Day. And there was no special night. There was no special hotel room purchase.
The Bahanas do.
There was no special dinner. Although my wife did bake me a very nice meatloaf. And
really?
I do love her meatloaf, and so that was a gift for me too as well. And
I love her meatloaf.
You eat her meatloaf when you're sitting at the kiddie table with the kids, so I not threatened by that remark at all.
But yeah, I mean, with all of the major holidays like that, we kind of just sort of skip over them in a way.
Have you ever legitimately made an actual attempt at celebrating Valentine's Day?
No.
Because, there's that movie called Valentine's Day that's out there.
Yeah.
Hollywood, it has a lot of stars from different parts of Hollywood. But, it kind of makes a big deal of Valentine's Day. And when you watch these Bahana shows, they seem to make a big deal of Valentine's Day, because then it's, if you're in a relationship, it's supposed to be this time that you celebrate each other's love, I guess. Or the love that you have for each other. And then if you're single, then it's a detriment, because then it's a reminder to you that you're single. And so they have these parties, I guess, where a lot of single people gather because they hate Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Because of, however it makes them feel for being single. And then for us natives, I guess, it's not even to that level, I guess, that it's that we recognize it. I mean, some of us, we'll get the small gifts and here you go, happy Valentine's Day. But then, per the movies, that, we don't take our wives to special hotel rooms and go to a special dinner or have some sort of date night, because I don't know, maybe that's just not ingrained in our DNA of how we do things. And especially for Hopis, because then we're so busy in the month of February.
Yeah. I mean,
there isn't time
it doesn't,
to celebrate.
It doesn't
Valentine's
really,
Day.
it doesn't really click for us, because So and Kwa, when they were growing up, they never heard of Valentine's Day. The only holiday that they heard of, or the only two holidays that they heard of, was Thanksgiving and Christmas. And they thought that Christmas and Thanksgiving were only celebrated in schools. Mm-hmm. And so they never thought what is coming up now, the March one,
St.
Patty's Day. Yeah,
but Hopis, we definitely celebrate that though. So.
Yeah, they celebrate that all year. So I don't know what that's all about. But
only difference is the beer is green in March.
And so in school, in grade school, we get the little cards, the little cards, and you make your own box out of the shoe box. Yeah.
That's probably the most you celebrate Valentine's Day. Yeah, that's the most in grade school.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so cool because I would sit down with So'o, and we would go over the box. We would create the box. We would do that, and next day with Valentine's Day, so would make out all the names and stuff like that, because you have to give them, every one of them, all the other girls, pretty much. I would never give one to the boys, only to the girls who are in my class. And man, my little shoe box would be filled with all those little lollipops and the little cards and everything like that. And that's the most that we've celebrated Valentine's Day. And so I think that's pretty much it, is that we don't really know the history about Valentine's Day. So we just kind of skim over it, and we just kind of follow whatever's in the in the white man's land, pretty much.
Just buy a dozen of roses and you're right.
Pretty much.
No, but I think that, the other thing that, at least pertaining to the month of February, that was kind of a topic that was kind of going through my head that I wanted to discuss, and we talked a little bit about it before we started recording. Yeah. That, because we, as Hopis, that this idea of Boomia takes most of our time. Yeah. Because then, there's, as a male, there's quite a bit that you have to do. As a female, there's quite a bit that you have to do. And so then in turn, that takes a lot of our time. But I think that, one of the things to mention is that I think that this year in 2023 was probably the first time that all of the villages celebrated Puomoya.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Valentine's Day.
Celebrated Puomoya. And so I think that's kind of different, because then at least, last year that there was maybe 2 or 3 villages, and then the year prior it was just one village.
Yeah.
That did their Puomoya to the extent. And I think that, one of the things that kind of stood out to me, or at least with my village, and, maybe it's different for other villages, but it's that, of course there was a COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
That followed Puomoya, because then, I think that the way that our ceremonies, that the fact that a majority of the happenings occur within the kiva.
Yeah.
And so it's like the kiva is the prime breeding ground for sickness to multiply and to be carried out by different hosts, and then in turn it goes into the homes, and then in turn it goes everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that same occurrence happened. But I guess for me, because as Puomoya was going on, and then I myself caught COVID too during this whole thing. And I think that one of the thoughts that I had is that how it's changed our mentalities, how COVID has changed our mentalities, especially in response to our ceremonies and responses to our doings. Because I guess, having this conversation now in 2023 is so different than having it in 2022 or 2021, because back then we were just talking about it. But this year we're actually seeing what the devastation, what it did,
the outcome of it,
and then how people reacted to it, and then how we move forward. Because then, one of the things that I've always thought about is that, because nowadays they tell you that if you don't feel good, if you have any symptoms, you shouldn't go down to the kiva.
Yeah.
And so, you could have a cough, you could have a runny nose, you could have a sore throat, a slight fever, or whatever it may be. That if you're in that condition, then you shouldn't go down, is what they say now. And then I guess as anybody out there within our communities wanting to stay safe, wanting to stay free of sickness, that you hope that the people around you are going to abide by that they're not going to go into the kiva if they have any type of symptoms.
Yeah.
But then, and I guess, this is where it really changes, because then as Hopis, right, like when we have Puomoya, or when we have anything else that's of importance, as it relates to our ceremonies, as it relates to, because then, at the very basis of any Hopi ceremony, we do this because we do it for the benefit of our lives.
Yeah.
We do it because we want to send good prayers out to the gods, and that they'll bless us with rain, or they'll bless us with snow, they'll bless us with fortune. That's why we do this.
We sacrifice ourselves.
We sacrifice our energy,
our souls,
sacrifice our time, and we sacrifice all of this so that in the long run, that Hopi and everything else, not just Hopi, but everybody else will benefit from it. And so to me, I guess, for my own opinion, is that doing these things is important.
Yeah.
We should do them.
Yeah.
We should be doing our dances. And I guess, because of this whole dynamic of COVID now, it seems that some of us are still afraid of having
to do
these
something
dances.
like this.
Some of us are still afraid of going down to the kiva. Some of us are still afraid of even just going into the villages.
Yeah.
Because if you went to any of the Puomoya ceremonies in any village this month, this year, that I would probably say that 90 to 95% of the attendees weren't wearing masks.
Yeah.
And so, you had like a real small percentage of folks that were still masked up, that were still going by the COVID protocols or whatever, they may be called. And so, I guess, to really see it play out was kind of an interesting thing, because then, and I mentioned this, I think we've talked about this before, that like pre-COVID, right? Like before COVID ever happened, that if you had a slight cough, you probably still go down to the kiva, because you have to finish. If you had a runny nose, you'd probably still go down.
Yes,
because you have to finish. And then, if you're in an unfortunate circumstance to where you contract COVID and this dances are still going on,
yes,
you're supposed to stay home.
Yeah.
You're supposed to stay isolated. And, this is something that a conversation that I had with the Res Famous wife at home is that, when people have COVID, that you would expect them to stay home.
Yeah.
But during Pamuya going into Pawomuya, I have heard that people were testing positive for COVID and they were still going into
down.
the villages to go Timai or something to that extent, helping to spread the love, I guess. and so, I think that, anybody's first reaction is like, why in the fuck would you still be around people if you know that you have COVID? And so, it tends to be, at least in my perception of how it is, it tends to be a mind game to a degree.
Yeah.
Because then, in this day and age, you have vaccinations, in this era of COVID, you have vaccinations. And so I think for the most part, a lot of our people are vaccinated. And so that's supposed to help. And, this was the question that I posed to you before we started recording is what's more dangerous, contracting COVID, contracting the common cold, contracting flu, or contracting pneumonia.
Yeah.
Because then to me, at least, I feel like that they're kind of all on the same level. You can die from catching the flu.
Oh, yeah.
You can die from catching pneumonia.
Yeah.
And then I think if you get a cold, then in turn, it can turn into something worse. And then you could die from it as well. But yet we seem to be more afraid of
the COVID,
over the others that are still around and that people are getting sick from. Because, one of my sisters made the joke that one of her boys, one of my nephews, he got sick and she took him to the hospital and everybody was worried, does he have COVID? Does he have COVID? I was like, no, he's just got a cold. Like, you remember that exists, that we can still just get a cold and not have COVID.
It's so strange because we think that COVID now is like the new thing that takes over the cold, the flu, the pneumonia and stuff like that.
Overtakes.
Yeah. And we think that as Hopis that, when we get sick, then it's automatically COVID because it's been ingrained in us now for about 3 years now that, if you do feel like a sore throat, headache, cough, all of these little things like that, you have to go get tested. In the past, we never got tested. We never got tested for cold, flu, or pneumonia because we knew that it's going to be a cold, flu, or pneumonia. And, all of these different things these different aspects that we follow as like people, especially with the government and stuff like that, is that we've been conditioned to see that
We've been conditioned. I think that's the biggest thing of what you're saying.
Yeah, we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to think that this is something more major than all the other ones that have been around since basically time immemorial. And so, I believe that, yes, this was a dangerous sickness that came upon us because, we had no vaccinations. When you were a kid, you were already vaccinated for all of the other stuff that was already here. But when this thing came around, we thought that there was going to be no cure for it. There's no vaccinations for it. And even to this day, there are some Hopis that still haven't been vaccinated and still thinking that this is pretty much nothing.
A government scheme.
Yeah, it's basically like that. So, in all, I mean, like, yes, we can still die. Like what you said, we can still die from the common cold, the virus, all of these different things like that. But yet, like what I said, we've been conditioned in a way to see that this is more or less like, a dangerous thing.
And I mean, I guess to me, and we've probably, beat this horse to death and still continue to talk about it, but it's something that's going on and you're seeing it now.
In
the villages, especially as we're more villages, well, basically all the villages have brought back what it is that we lost during this pandemic
for the 3 years.
Or at least put a pause on. And you're seeing different reactions. You're seeing people that kind of like that, they don't care. It's like, we got to do this, we're gonna do it. And you have people that are still pretty afraid of it, and so they're not sending their kids down, or they're not going down themselves, or they're still doing all of the precautions, and so it's really, I guess you're really seeing post-COVID life,
but
with COVID in the villages now. How we're responding to
the things that I did see that did change a lot with this COVID thing now is that there are now like the hand sanitizers in the kivas.
Yeah.
Like everywhere, every kiva that you go to, there is like a big bottle of hand sanitizer, and men use that. And I'm pretty sure that we were supposed to be using it in the past, like, even with colds and stuff like that. Yeah. But now, before COVID, you're supposed to use that. You're supposed to at least try to keep germs away from anybody else. But yet nowadays, like, there are, there are always boxes of masks there, the little face masks in the kivas, and there's are always the pumps with the hand sanitizer there, and so that has changed. That has changed our lifestyle of like actually going down to the kiva.
And one of the new things too, and I do appreciate that at least the local healthcare center, Tuba City Regional Healthcare Corporation, they actually provided COVID tests for all the kivas.
Really?
And then I'm pretty sure that they did that for the upper village as well. But they brought COVID tests down to all the kivas. So the kivas had their own supply of COVID tests, and the members of the kivas that if they wanted one, then they just ask whoever's in charge, and they get it for them. And so that was different, and it kind of, I guess, really makes you think about things a little bit more, because at least in my kiva, that we're still kind of stuck behind the times, because as far as hydration goes, there's still just a big bucket of water sitting in the middle of the kiva, and everybody drinks from the same kayapi. And even post-COVID, that bucket of water was still there. And then when you go to make your prayers, when you go to Otongya, that you're sharing it with other members, and so there's still some of that aspect that's still within our kiva.
That is something that it hasn't changed. There are things that do change, but there are things that haven't changed a whole lot. We're real Hopis. We don't drink water anyway, so. But besides the point is that, it's 2023. Okay, I was going to say 2022. It's 2023 now. And, COVID now is getting to that diminished level where we think that, okay, it's safe now, but we don't follow it anymore, like how we did in the past. Like last year, we're always looking at the numbers. We're always looking at the CDC numbers of like, and then the news is always plastering that as well too. Like every hour they'll be plastering the numbers. Now when you watch the news, they won't say the numbers anymore. They'll just have it on the bottom, like with the runner, on the bottom of the page, and there, you'll see like the little numbers there. Of course, there are people still dying of COVID, but not as much as before. So I think now that as Hopis are going forward, I think now we're starting to kind of like, forget about that whatever that disaster was back in the past 2 years, and just sort of just like pick up like where we left off back in 2019. It's so strange. It's so strange when you hear that. It's like when you know that you've done something like something like this in the past, all of our dewey, all of our knowledge and stuff like that, our ceremonies in the past. And when you pick that back up again, it kind of feels like a new thing. Like, you're like, I forgot how to do these things here. I forgot how to, like, it's basically trying to retrain yourself to ride a bike. It's not like, like you never forget how to ride a bike. You kind of have to know, know the brakes and everything like that. So like in Hopi life, that's pretty much how we are doing it now, is like, we haven't done a lot of things in the past that we're doing now. So we're kind of just like easing into that whole thing like that. Yeah.
And so, but I imagine that everything's going to kind of go back towards what it used to be.
Yeah.
And, I guess everybody out there is going to handle it however they feel they need to handle it. I mean, like me, like I'm one that goes down there without a mask. I'm one that I guess isn't really afraid of it.
So basically you're ground zero.
I'm ground zero. So if there's anything going on in my village, and if you don't want to catch COVID, it's probably best not to talk to me face to face.
Talk to you anymore. Don't go to that guy. That guy has COVID.
Exactly. But then, you do hear about people that, really tried to protect themselves the best that they could. And, you know, I think that there's a whole lot more to talk about that, at least as far as that goes. But that was something that I definitely wanted to talk about because then, you know, it's just different now.
Yeah, it's different
how we think about it now.
We won't beat around it, but it is different. It is a different feeling.
I imagine that there are people that do test positive for COVID, but still go down to the field and that still go down into the village. And, you know, I think a point that I made earlier when we were talking in private, that probably because whatever it is that they need to do for their family, maybe there's nobody else to finish it for them. And so they can't afford to not go down, so they still gotta
they still have to go follow this thing through.
Does that make them bad people? You know, I don't know, you know, because at the brunt of it, you think that if you don't feel good, then just stay away so you don't get everybody else sick. But then, you know, that really, it changes once you're in it, once you're doing it, because then, like I said before, that I think that these ceremonies are important, that we should be having them, and that we should be doing our part to make it so that it happens.
You know, and even though if you don't have COVID or anything like that, you shouldn't be going anywhere, especially like to going to like school or to work or to
your nose is all running
and you're still at school or your work and exactly.
The ladies not quiet, and then you know your cuspi's all dripping into all the dishes and everybody's having a taste of up your nose.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like with anything, you shouldn't be doing that, even though if you did have a cold. But all in all, I mean, yeah, it does feel different. It does feel different.
It does. Devehongnem Creations is an indigenous woman-owned small business specializing in handmade fine arts, primarily custom jewelry and attire. The artist behind Devehongnem Creations is AJ Nakwaitiwa, and the work she makes explores the relationships between modern culture with a respect for Hopi traditions and values. The pieces she creates results from her hope to make indigenous art visible. Nakwaitiwa aims to promote and sustain the continued practice of those arts for future generations. You can find available work online at www.devehongnemcreations.com, and you can also follow at Devehongnem_on Instagram and Twitter, or Devehongnem Creations Facebook to stay up to date. And then, you know, I did want to carve, you know, some space out, at least as far as, because through our social media accounts that, you know, the question was posed again to our listeners about some suggestions. About potential discussion points. And, you know, I think that, you know, because we did create this extensive list about what we would talk about this season, that, you know, some of these points may not make it as a full episode, but at least, you know, having this time. And, you know, this is something too that I think that we've kind of beaten to death as far as like half Hopis, but this was a suggestion that was submitted through the social media. And, you know, but the thing that I thought is that even though we've talked about this idea of half Hopis or half breeds or, you know, mixed culture, whatever it is that you want to call it, that we've never really talked about it to the extent of, as far as bringing in this component of getting Wimke. Because then, you know, we talked about Powomoya, we talked about, you know, the disease, at least as far as COVID goes, and how that's affected that. But, and you know, this actually has been brought up too, about multiple times, but this idea of getting your kids Wimke, and if these kids that are getting Wimke, are they even really Hopi that are getting Wimke? Because then, you know, we've talked about these table conversations before that people have, and, you know, but do we talk about it publicly, I guess? And I don't think a lot of us do talk about it publicly.
No,
because then, you know, because then it's like one of those things, right? It's like, and you say this all the time, and, you know, I would never agree with you, even though behind closed doors, maybe, you know, what I do say supports your argument. But you said this before, that Hopis are racist. You know? And no Hopi would ever
agree to that,
publicly admit that, oh, Carl's right, you know, we are racist. But then behind closed doors, what are the jokes that we're making about Navajos? What are the jokes that we're making about black people? What are the jokes that we're making about Bahanam? And then, you know, I think that this topic kind of falls into that, as far as, you know, what our perspectives are of, I guess, you know, in a sense, non-Hopi children getting Wimke. And what Wimke means, I guess, is initiated, but I guess specifically to the Powomoya ceremony, and I guess specifically Katin Wimke. is what we're talking about. And I guess, to some people where this becomes a problem is that only Hopi kids should be getting Wimkia.
Yeah.
But yet you have families out there that are putting kids in that don't have Hopi mothers.
Yeah.
And then they're becoming initiated. And then I guess taking a step into this realm that we believe should only belong for Hopis. And so, that was kind of something that was thrown in there in the suggestion box. And it's, if you really think about it, I guess it tends to be this real, I don't know if broad is the right term, but it's definitely a divisive topic, because then you have people that strongly believe on one side and you have people that strongly believe on the other side. And I think that, for you and I to talk about that, it would kind of be one-sided, because then, I thought about myself is that I would never know what it feels like to be
a half-breed.
Yeah. Or to be called those types of negative terms, I guess, like that. Because in every sense of the word, whether you're using the Pahana enrollment measurement or you're using our own traditional measurement, I'm full-blooded Hopi.
Yeah.
In every angle of the argument.
Yeah.
Although my lower legs might disagree, because there's a lot of hair on my legs,
inner thighs,
as compared to how Hopis looked like back in the day with absolutely no body hair. And then I think you're also in that area,
argument
that you're Hopi in every sense of what that term means, except that your pono might suggest that you're part sumo wrestler,
part Japanese. Yeah, part Japanese, just the lower part.
And so, and I guess, because then, I guess to be black and white about it, which, we've made statements before. If your mother's not Hopi, then you're not Hopi.
It's so strange that when we put emphasis on like being a Hopi members should only be doing Hopi things. And I agree with that. Like, I agree that if your mom's Hopi, your dad's Hopi, then you are Hopi. Then you should be doing a lot of these Hopi things like that. But if your dad is, some other Indian and your mom's Hopi, then you're still considered Hopi in our eyes, because everything comes, like what we said in the past is that everything comes from the mother's side. But if your mom is not Hopi, but yet your father is Hopi, then that kind of changes that dynamic of like us saying that, oh, that's just a half-breeder. Even us new guys in the woke, quote unquote, woke era, like, if we say that, yes, I'm a racist, then that kind of dictates to other people like, oh, we can't associate with that.
You can't associate this is how he thinks.
Yeah, this is how he thinks. But it is true that Hopis have a set way of life. Hopis have this set way of thinking, have a set way of culture that only incorporates only Hopis, what they know. And just like with Pahanas, like they have their churches, and yes, they want to convert us, but yet we don't want to do that because that's their stuff. And we don't, and there are certain things that Pahanas don't want natives to do. And basically the same way with us too, that non-natives should not be doing what we should be, that we are doing.
That's true. And I guess because the listener that submitted this suggestion for a talking point, they actually had a really detailed example, and it really got me to think, because then like you said, if your mother is Hopi, then you're Hopi.
Yeah.
And if you're only a quarter Hopi, but if it's on your mother's side and your mother's Hopi on their mother's side, then you still qualify. Even like by the enrollment dynamic, maybe you're only a quarter Hopi.
Yeah.
But because the Hopi comes from your mother's side, it comes from your soul side, then you're still considered in the club, so to speak. But then, like one of the things that I think changes, because then when you talk about multicultural folks, right?
Yeah.
That I think that skin color is still a pretty big as far as our eyes are concerned, as far as optics are concerned, because then if you have somebody that's half Hopi and half Navajo, they still look Indian to us.
Yeah.
And so I think that those types of people might still, at least in our brains, kind of still seem more Hopi to us because they're brown skinned. But then yet you have folks out there that have Pahana in them, that have Sakam Castilla in them, to the point to where they look like Pahanas. They look like black people.
Yeah.
But then yet through our traditional interpretation of what a Hopi is, they're Hopi because their Hopiness comes from their mother's side, and then that in turn, it's a matrilineal thing. But because they look white, they look black, we treat them even less Hopi than we do some individual that might have a Navajo mother but has a Hopi father.
Yeah.
And then so, I think that that's something, at least as far as multicultural, that we've never talked about before, is that what optically does a person look like? Because then, we've had, and I think that we've made this statement before, that unfortunately, some of our Sinom, that they do look Pahana, they look black, and so we treat them worse for some reason, and to support your argument, and so that in turn becomes that. But then I guess really because I think that at one point in my life I would have to admit, at least as far as this topic of non-Hopis, this idea of quote unquote non-Hopis getting Wimke, I think that I used to have a pretty black and white perception on what it was, because I believe that too, that we're a matrilineal society, that at no point did the gods ever tell us anything different, so this is how we should conduct ourselves, and this is who it should be for. But then I think that when you start to really look at who's in our villages, that you do have folks that have Hopi fathers and Himusino mothers, but yet they're still in the villages. They're still experiencing this quote unquote Hopi life.
Yep.
They're still running around and doing things that Hopi kids do. And so because they have this experience, because they're gaining the knowledge, because they have their hands on it, doing these things, does that make them any less Hopi? And I guess that's where the other argument is to put these kids in, because they are living this Hopi life to an extent, therefore that makes them Hopi.
Yeah.
And so, I think that because, there's so many strong arguments for both sides.
Yeah.
That to me, now, I was telling my wife, it's I don't even know what side I'm on anymore as far as this argument goes, because then I've, you see people that might be another tribe by definition of matrilineal, but yet they know so much about Hopi that they could even speak Hopi. And so then in turn, are they still not Hopi as a result of, this way that we believe things to be?
I think with your side, you're sort of on that grayish side where you're mixing black and white.
Yeah.
I'm more of just the black and white issue guy. I'm keeping it black and white. It's because you live in a world where it's two cultures clashing together. Mm-hmm. You live where it's the kind of that urban-esque kind of way where you have a lot of little bit of mixed cultures in between. I live where it's just basically black and white. Where
keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. If you live in a village and you're Hopi, that's what you are. You're Hopi. If you're outsider that's coming in, then we're going to treat you as an outsider because you're an outsider. And so I think that in a way that when we see both sides of it, it's that, yes, we are races. All Hopis are races in a way, even though they don't want to admit it.
To some percentage,
even though they don't want to.
You know why I think that we're the way that we are?
Why?
I think that we're the way that we are is that because we're so proud of what we have.
Yes,
and
yes.
We use it as a means to kind of, I think probably essentially it started as a way to prop ourselves up, to make us feel better about ourselves, but now it's gotten to the point to where we're actually looking down
at other people,
on other natives.
And that's fine with me. I think that because since we've been doing a lot of our Hopi stuff in time immemorial, that we should be proud of that. We still talk our language. We still do a lot of our stuff that we have been doing for centuries. And when you look at other cultures like that, then you feel that, oh yeah, they given up their stuff, not willfully but forcefully. And us, we're very, very thankful that we haven't gone to that extent. Mm-hmm. We haven't lost a lot where we're trying to fight for it back. Yes, in a way, we've lost a lot in the different villages. Yes, we've lost a lot of our real Hopi doings, our real culture, but we're still trying to hold on to whatever we have left.
And, I think that at least as far as your comment on me kind of being gray, and I think I will admit that I'm starting to lean towards more of the gray area, because I think that what kind of pushed me towards that gray area is this idea of being compassionate for other people.
Yeah.
Because then, like, you think about kids, right? Like kids, they don't make the decisions for the situations that they're in.
Yeah.
Like, the decision was made by their parents. If one Hopi man and a Navajo lady decided that they were going to love each other and make babies, that's the decision they made for their children.
Yeah.
That their children are going to be half Navajo and half Hopi. And then it's not their fault that if those two parents then decided that, well, we're going to take you down to the village and you're going to experience some of this Hopi stuff to the point to where, you feel like you're a Hopi because you're there in the village. You're hearing the language being spoken. You're seeing the katinam walking through the village. You're getting all of these things, I guess, kind of in a way reaffirming that identity of your Hopiness. And so, like, for those children, like, that wasn't their choice. It wasn't their choice to be put into that position. And I think that that's kind of the stance that a lot of these parents or grandparents make when they try to put those types of kids into the kiva. And, like, to me, because then, and this is a conversation that households have all the time. Like these points that we're making.
I like how you call them those kids. Yeah, those kids over there.
I guess I got
different.
Some black and white left in me. But, like, because then, because the other thing that I think about too sometimes is because, especially I think when it comes to Navajo and Hopi, specifically Navajo and Hopi, because Navajo, they're matrilineal too. And so, like, if you had two matrilineal tribes getting together, then you would think that they would both support the idea that our children are going to go the matrilineal way and then be Navajos. If the mother is going to be Navajo. But I think what the dynamic that changes as far as Hopi is concerned, and you talked about it, that we've retained a lot of these things, that a lot of these practices that we continue, it's very attractive to
other
Hopi.
tribes.
It's very attractive to be Hopi. And so it's like, if you have a chance to have that culture a part of your life, these families, they want it. They want that Hopi part to be, because I know people that have Navajo kids, not even an ounce of Hopi in them. They call their little girls mono.
See, I'm telling you, we're all racist. It reminds me of that. Remember that movie, Dances with Wolves? Remember the white woman?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. This is basically the same concept. She'll never be an Indian, but she knows the language. So that's why they're trying to marry her off to that white man.
But I guess, I know we're running low on time, and, this is the conversation, and this is why I compared it to what you said about proclaiming that we're all racist. Is that we don't have this conversation in public is because it pisses people off.
It does piss people off.
We don't have these conversations in public because then it hurts people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it legitimately hurts people. And so I think that that's kind of, I guess, the downfall of you and I talking about it, is because we only know one side of the argument.
Yeah.
We only understand one side of the argument, and that there's a whole nother side of the argument that has a different experience, that has a different perception on it, that has different I guess, ideas of what it means. But this topic to me is important because then as we go into the future, I believe that more and more of our people are going to have kids with non-Hopis. And then so you're going to have this very large generation.
Because there are no good women here left. That's why there are no good women left here.
I think because 50% of the Hopi female population are Bikes Wutis. are Patki and fuck, they can't cook for nothing. So I guess
they are good women. They are good women.
Support that argument. But I guess what I'm saying is that more and more of this is going to be more prevalent. Like it's going to be more prevalent than what it is now. And 20 years ago, it was probably a conversation, but now in 2023, you see more of it happening.
It is happening. Yeah.
And if we're having these conversations, if we're arguing about it, if we're fighting about it, like, is there a solution?
Yeah.
Is there a level of acceptance that then do we start talking about? Because then to me, I guess I if you don't have a Hopi mother, but you have a pretty good grasp on what our culture is, if you have a pretty good grasp, at least in understanding the language, then by all means, come into the kiva and come do these things, because then you're in addition of support, I guess, for what's going on as far as good prayers and muscles to do a lot of this heavy lifting that's needed to do these ceremonies. As long as you're Wimka, then, you can do these things. But I guess really, and this is the part that people don't want to talk about, is that, and see, then this in turn becomes true for our people that do have Hopi mothers, is that when we start sending people down to the kiva that don't understand Hopi, that don't have a grasp of our
roots,
our roots or our beliefs, it dilutes everything. And it makes it less Hopi. But this isn't just true of people that don't have Hopi mothers. This is also true of people that have Hopi mothers.
Well, it's true all across the board.
And then it becomes a level playing field.
Yeah, it does.
And then when it's gone to this point, which it has, then who decides who's more Hopi than the other? And then, it becomes, you end up like that guy, that meme where he has like all these yarns of string all over his board because he's like trying to figure something out. He looks all stressed out because like he's trying to figure out what the answer is. And I think that we've gone to that point, because then, it's like, and then it ends up being, well, who's more Hopi than who, and is it possible for somebody that doesn't have a Hopi mother, can they be more Hopi than somebody that does have a Hopi mother?
Yeah.
And then where is the balance, I guess? Because I was thinking about it, because like you said, we're racist towards each other.
Yeah.
We tend to say these bad things, and because Bohomoya happened, and that was the topic of conversation. And my wife, so and so put their kids in, and they're not even Hopi. Oh well, they did it at the upper village. They just accept anybody up there.
Yeah.
And then we tend to make those remarks, and then and I was thinking about it, that because then you do have villages that are a little bit more
lenient
as far as who can go into their kivas.
Yeah.
And you have villages that are more stricter of who can get initiated into the doings of the kivas there. And I was thinking about it because then, those villages that have more restrictions, they're always not happy because so-and-so is trying to put this person in and they're not even Hopi.
Yeah.
Or they let so-and-so in and their mother's not even from this village.
Yeah.
But then you don't get that with those villages that are lenient because they let everybody in.
Yeah.
And so everybody's halai, everybody's happy, everybody's posting their hara and their katina cookies on social media. Everybody had happy. And then so, it tends to be a give and take type of situation because then the full community is happy because they let everybody in. Even if some of those kids by some measurement aren't really Hopi, and you have the more traditional villages who are mad because they're not letting certain people in or they're letting certain people in. But then when you look at the actual ceremonies with a fine comb, I tend to see that the villages that are more lenient, that their actual ceremonies seem less Hopi.
Yeah.
Because they're accepting everybody in, and the more traditional ones, their ceremonies seem more Hopi because there's a restriction.
I think the reason why a lot of these villages that have the restrictions like that is because we don't want our culture just to be plastered out on Facebook or Instagram or in books or anything like that. And when you look at the lenient villages, like, there are some lenient villages out there who just put in, if you're Donald Trump, let's go ahead and wink at that guy, But, in a way...
And see, I guess that's a thing too. And just to make this clear, and sorry to cut you off, but it's not just that, people have Hopi are half Hopi and half Navajo.
Yeah.
That there are actually people that only their pinky toe is Hopi, and yet they're still getting Wimke without any semblance of what our doings are.
And you did actually take the words out right from my mouth. So, that's the whole argument with that here. And there is a lot to it when you look at that. And I think we did do an episode of this, right?
I think we did, but we didn't talk specifically about Wimke.
I think we just said that, if you're a Muggle born, then,
If you watched... what was that Hot Vela documentary on YouTube?
Yeah.
If you watch Ditskwa Ikatsi on YouTube, then you can get Wimke if you'd like to.
If we were in the Harry Potter world, we would be Slytherins. Hopis would be Slytherins because we're very exclusive on who gets into the school.
Very exclusive. And see, I know this is running long, but I just always believe that, that's always made Hopi unique to a lot of other minorities, because then where everybody else is preaching inclusivity, diversity, and inclusion, Hopis are boarding up their doors, and you guys keep the fuck out.
Yeah, exactly. It's all of these conversations, and I'm pretty sure that your list goes a long way. What does your list say? We didn't even get to. You know what? We'll do another smorgasbord episode.
Okay, and then we'll bring these.
Yeah, let's do that next week.
Because truth be told, I had this long list of talking points, and we only got through one of them.
I know, right? I mean, it's been a great show. I mean, it's an hour long, and I'm pretty sure that you guys are already tired, or you probably turned us off a long time ago. Yeah. But anyway, it's been great back here in the studio, and, we're going to be doing this every week for 10 weeks.
For 10 weeks straight.
For 10 weeks straight. I mean, look for us on Facebook, Spotify, whatever you listen to and stuff like that. So I know that it's been a long time since we've done anything like this, and 3 months. 3 months is something that it's been taking a toll on us. So.
I appreciated that vacation.
Oh yeah, so we're very, very refreshed. We're very, very enthusiastic about this season, and I'm very hyped up. I'm hyped up to get this thing going.
Heck yeah.
Hell yeah. All right, so if you guys want to donate something, go to buymeacoffee.com/CJPodcast to donate $1 or more. Or if you guys want to become a monthly sponsor, go to anchor.fm/CJPodcast 85 to become a monthly donor. It's only $4.99 or $9.99 a month, and you get your name shout out. And a plus too, we are working on extra content for you guys. So yes, this is an actual thing that we're working on. So thank you guys for listening with us. So thank you guys.
Damn, Carl, you didn't even miss the beat. It didn't even seem like we took 3 months off, because I was trying to remember, what am I supposed to say here? How do I end the episode? But if you're not following us on our social media accounts and you would like to, you can find us at Carl and J-Man all across the boards on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And also too, that you can find this episode on YouTube, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then if you're not listening to this on Spotify, want to listen to it again on Spotify is actually a sponsor as well of the podcast. And so this is very true, that we do get change.
Yeah.
We do get change from Spotify. And so, we'd like to thank them for that. And then if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to give us a 5-star review, because your podcast isn't 5 stars unless your Apple Podcast is 5 stars.
You're struggling from this.
I got the rest with me. So let's end this, Carl.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. My name is Carl, and this is my best friend, J-Man.
So long. Quack, quack.